You are listening to the Evolution Exchange, a melting pot of ideas and inspiration shared by some of the most successful tech leaders here in Asia. I'm Sid, and I help connect companies with the best tech talent, and today I'm your host. In today's episode, we'll be talking about AI, and joining us are two industry leaders who play different but equally important roles in the use of AI in our industries. Our first guest is Sanjay Uppal, the founder and CEO of finbots.ai. Prior to this, he founded Strategist, a company that advised financial institutions across Asia and the Middle East on their digital transformation journeys. Before starting his entrepreneurial ventures, he worked at companies like Standard Chartered and Hong Leong Bank in senior leadership positions. Our second guest is Aditya Shankar, the Chief AI Strategist at DataRobot. He helps companies and leaders understand AI, how it can help them, and the strategy needed to make it work across the entire organization. Prior to this, he has spent his entire career in consulting for analytics in companies such as BCG, PwC, and Accenture. He is also an adjunct faculty member at NUS, Singapore Poly, and other institutions. Before we go on, a quick disclaimer. All thoughts and views expressed by our speakers and myself are that of the individual and not that of the organizations. And with that, let's get started. So we'll start off with some quick introductions. Sanjay, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thanks, Sid. I'm Sanjay Uppal. I'm founder and CEO of finbots.ai. As Sid mentioned, my background is engineering and master's in physics with an MBA, and I spent a considerable career in financial services and banking in specific across multiple countries in predominantly Asia and the Middle East. I founded finbots.ai just over 5 years ago with a view that the environment was ready for adoption of AI, but also there were legacy challenges in financial institutions that needed a lot more different thinking than what we had done over the last few decades, and AI presented that opportunity.
Aditya here. Thanks for the generous introduction. Sid, I work for a company called DataRobot, whose purpose is to make sure that AI is achievable at scale across enterprises, and it is delivering tangible value. In that regards, I work across some of our largest clients across the APAC region to make sure that they are adopting AI to the best of its capabilities, with the hope that they're using DataRobot to execute on that plan. Yeah, I've been in Singapore for many years, in the data space for more than 15. Back then it was known as analytics. Even before that, it was called as data warehousing and business intelligence. There was nothing intelligent about it. It's all very intelligent now, I can tell you. So I've been very happy to be here and share my thoughts on how I see AI evolving, what are the challenges, and what makes it very exciting these days.
Fantastic. So today we're talking about AI, but specifically in business. I think everyone recently has been very intrigued by AI. Everyone's been playing around with ChatGPT. GPT-4 just came out. I think everyone's recognizing the value, but I think businesses struggle to really utilize it in the best ways. So, Sanjay, what are your thoughts on the current state of AI?
I think broadly, we are seeing some really exciting developments in the AI space, but in the longer term journey, we're still in a fairly nascent stage, both in terms of the kind of solutions we're developing and the applications of AI, but equally in the understanding of AI and the concepts around AI and how that is harnessed, how does that apply to various problems and business situations or personal situations. So we are beginning to see some really good successes on this, and equally, I think every few weeks we do hear of some spectacular, I would say, blowups that happen, which are a stark reminder of the need to harness it right, AI. And I think where we are right now, we are going in the right direction. There's enormous amount of learning and application that still needs to happen. And it's also the stage where we're at the early stages of a marathon where the person who's in the lead is going to continue to change. And I think the headlines over the last 6-8 months have demonstrated that. But it also won't be far from true to say the person who's going to lead AI in the world may be an entity which is not even founded yet.
Could be founded by AI.
Could be that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think your question, Sid, is probably can be separated into two parts, right? One is the current state of AI as a technology, and the second part is the current state of AI in enterprises, which are not primarily technology driven, right? Even with the second part, you can break it down into different components. Companies who are tech in nature, tech is their very core offering, like Facebook, Meta, Google, the Microsofts of the world. The other part of enterprises, tech's not what they sell, right? I mean, one can argue that every organization today is a tech organization, but that's not what they sell. Banks, for example, telcos, for example, right? So let's take that one by one, right? So if you look at the current state of AI as a technology, AI is not something which is new, right? So you want to be able to trace its roots back to when it was first started. It was proposed as a term by the legendary Joe McCarthy, the scientist at MIT, also the founder of the Lisp programming language back in the 50s. Neural network as a concept has been around since then, right? So AI as a technology itself is not drastically new. What's making it very, very interesting now is the ubiquity of computing and the storage which is available now, the rise of the hyperscalers, for example. The rise of projects such as OpenAI, which have made it very easy for you to research and sort of propagate AI and its outputs at the hands of consumers who have nothing to do with AI. That's the real game changer now, right? I mean, for some of us who've been in this field, the rise of extremely large but fairly simple neural network models with what's known as a feed-forward architecture. We have known for a fact for the past 5 years that these are going to eventually pass what's known as the Turing test. Think imitation game, for example, right? Which is basically, it makes it indifferentiable from a human being or in tasks that a human being usually does. For example, writing language, right? So that has been pretty clear for us. Now, suddenly all of this, like as Sanjay mentioned, there have been a few blowouts in the last few months. What they've done is they put the ability to access the outputs of these AI algorithms in the hands of people who have nothing to do with AI. And now they're suddenly viewing this as a sort of a magical breakthrough moment. And every person out there on the street is coming up with use cases of AI, is thinking of new and innovative ways of adopting it. That's a very, very interesting space that AI has entered now. So what has happened essentially is it's moved away from experimentation to now people are starting to think about commercialization, right? So that this is, as my CEO currently puts it, is the age of value-driven AI. We are past the hype phase, we're past the experimental phase of AI, and now we're really talking about commercialization. Look at the AI wars which is going on between Microsoft and Google. It reminds you of the browser wars back in the day, which used to happen between
Yahoo and Google.
Yahoo and Google
at
one point in time, Yahoo and Microsoft and Internet Explorer and things like that. Yeah. So it's very interesting now. We are in the age of AI wars because people are thinking about commercialization. So that's where the technology is right now. We've gone through the phase of experimentation, of rapid evolution, we encountered the state of ubiquity of computing and storage, which gave us enormous abilities to sort of put all of those resources into development of large-scale AI models. And now we're thinking about commercialization. And now when I say we, it's not only people like Sanjay and me who are practitioners in AI, but it's every other person out on the street because of the accessibility that OpenAI has given them. Yeah. Now, the second part of the question is about the enterprises adopting AI. Now, if you, again, broken down into two parts of the tech companies whose core offering is tech, Meta, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and such like, right? These companies, of course, are on a different trajectory when it comes to AI because that's their core offering. The more accurate their AI models become, the better it is for them because of this fundamental structure of their business. The more advertising money they can attract, for example, right? They can charge more for the same ad if they prove to the advertisers that they're targeting more accurately, right? So they are obviously at a different scale. But the real value of AI is transforming companies whose core offering is not tech. Banks, for example. Sanjay is a very senior banker himself. I'm sure he will agree with me that there is a huge amount of opportunities in banks to really transform themselves using AI. But the challenge there is that large banks, large enterprises in general, have different parts of their organizations which are at different sort of levels of their AI maturity. So there is a huge imbalance within organizations on what AI really means for them and what it can really do, and do they have a proper strategy for AI, for example, right? So yeah, I mean, I think that's my read of the technology, the state of the technology and the state of the industry in adopting the technology. But I'm sure we can drill into it further as the conversation progresses. What do you think, Sanjay?
I think you're very right in terms of the core technology companies as well as the non-tech companies that are seeing the opportunity to apply it to solve a lot of legacy problems. And that's where, as I said, the understanding of AI and the principles of AI and application are still evolving. One of the things is you rightly touched about it, which is what has really enabled AI, because some of these algorithms that we work with today is something I'd worked in my engineering days. Right?
Very right.
I used to work with little kind of microcosm of these things.
Single cell perceptrons, as they used to call them back in the day.
And literally out of what I call the, more theoretically, because that's the span of what we could do. You have to remember in those days, running programs which were fairly simple, could take you up to 6-7 hours. So forget about trying to run an algo then. But I think we've moved a lot since then. Today, the challenge really is, when we were developing a product, for example, and what we were trying to do is say, this is how things have been done for the last 25, 30 years. Now, how do I make them more efficient using AI? And what I realized is we had very limited success. So I said, okay, let's assume I don't know how this problem is solved. How would I solve it now that I have this new set of tools? And that became something very, very different. So, when you're talking about large organizations that can benefit and apply AI, I think there's an enormous change in the way you think about that problem itself. True. Because the way you solved it traditionally is not the way you necessarily solve it by using AI. And so you're not just expecting somebody to understand how AI is applied, but also how do I use that to solve this problem completely differently to how I've handled it before.
True.
And that's something you come across quite often.
Yeah. I think it's almost like, if you were, I have a degree in physics, right? So I sort of compare the AI world to what my core degree was. It's almost the difference between classical physics and quantum physics. Right, the classical way is the old school rule-based way of, or rule-based plus statistical way of, say, doing credit scoring, for example, right, which you are very, very familiar with. And that's the classical way. The quantum way is the AI way. And the key differences there are quite profound, actually. The classical way is driven by hypotheses. What are your rules? Your rules are basically hypothesis, right? You're saying if a guy is unmarried, if he earns, say, $30,000 a year and he's looking for a loan of $50,000, he's most likely to default. That's a rule-based scenario. It's completely hypothesis-based. Your hypothesis is that particular set of characteristics defines a probable defaulter of loans, right? What if that hypothesis is wrong? Then your entire set of controls is wrong. The quantum way or the AI way is basically trying to derive that hypothesis from the data itself, right? So you use the data to tell you or inform you of those rules. Therefore, you have very little chance of your hypothesis to go wrong, and you automatically breach that accuracy threshold that you have never been able to do.
No, that's a really great point. So just taking the credit scoring example. So people are used to tweaking certain elements in that maths, right? Because the hypothesis change. Somebody comes and you come and you've got a different view of the world, you've got a different view of the world. And so when we say this is how the model will be developed in terms of deriving that information, it's like, I know it's derived, but can I still tweak that? And it's not, you can't, right? You shouldn't. Because that's just going to break the entire process down of the outcome of that model and takes it off to a very, very different tangent. But exactly to that point, thinking of this is how I solved that problem before, you can still do it right now, but it has to be done very, very differently.
Yes.
And I think that's the exciting part about AI, because as people learn more about how to apply it, the avenues of problems that will get solved will just explode.
Yeah. And you think about it, right? The quantum world, which is the AI world, right? It gives you a chance to truly achieve automation, right? It is obviously increasing your accuracy. So you're making better decisions, which is more accurate predictions, more accurate decisions. Of course, there is many details in between that, from prediction to decision, which we can touch upon. But it automatically means that you're making better decisions. But you're also having capability to automate. You now have capabilities to put straight through processing pipelines in place, in which your predictions can generate an automated decision, which can automatically result in an action that an organization can take. Take the example of credit scoring again, right? You have developed a highly accurate, highly explainable, transparent model, which is, can satisfy any amount of scrutiny. You're satisfied with the performance of it, it's highly accurate. You put that into production, is driving a straight-through processing pipeline. Because it is accurate, you can now increase your financial inclusion net many-fold without assuming a proportionately large amount of risk. Because it's a straight-through processing pipeline which is able to automatically approve or reject a loan based on customer characteristics automatically. This is the kind of scale that AI can give you and transformative capability that AI can have, really.
Yep. So I guess that's a huge opportunity that we have here with AI.
So guys, tell me if I'm talking too much.
No, this is perfect.
Seriously.
This is my favorite topic.
We
can
go on for a bit.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Don't include that in the podcast, which I'm saying.
That's the opportunity that we have. But what have you seen are the biggest challenges that you face, I guess, consulting these companies, right? What have been the major blockers in terms of the adoption?
I think let's not call it blockers. Let's call it a unique challenge to solve, right? I think that's the way we should put it. I think what happens again, if you go back to the construct of companies who are driven by tech or whose core offering is tech versus companies whose core offering is traditionally not tech. I think the companies whose core offering is traditionally not tech, in my opinion, I think they would do well to have an enterprise definition of what AI really is at the very highest level, right? So at the level at which Sanjay sits, for example, board level. A board of a large enterprise should have a very clear understanding of what AI is and what AI is not, more importantly. And that should cascade downwards from the CEO's office of what's AI, what does AI mean for me, down to each individual lines of business. That then means that you should have a proper AI strategy, right? Which is translated into a roadmap of use cases across the different levels of organization based on the different levels of organizations' maturity, AI maturity, or AI readiness, as we call it, right? And that is, first of all, critical. The second thing is, you should have an AI-enabled workforce, right? You should have a tiered enablement program, which is runs across the organization, from the executive level, from the board level. It's a different definition of AI, to the middle management who needs to only know how to manage AI programs. The executives need to know how to spot an AI opportunity, how to fund it, and how to measure the ROI, right? That's what the executives need to know, right? A middle management needs to know how to run an AI program. The ground level needs to know how to execute. That's a tiered enablement program. We should have a AI-enabled workforce. And then, thirdly, what you need is a good technology stack, which, gives you the ability to have rapid experimentation, but also to manage the AI workload at production scale. You have thousands of models. You need to have a single pane of glass in which you can manage and monitor all of them across it. And then you need to have organizational structures in place which allow you to collaborate, to rapidly experiment, fail fast, succeed quicker, hopefully, and get to value faster. So these are some of the characteristics you need to sort of, solve for if you want to have So,
No, I completely agree with you. I think some of these layers are still being put in place or not there altogether. Last year, I was invited to speak at the lab call for part of FinTech Festival at one of the global banks. And the question was, what does it take for a 100-plus-year-old bank to adopt innovation? And they were pretty straight up. You look at these fintechs, you look at some of these entities, they're able to get onto that journey a lot faster. Why aren't we able to do the same?
good question. Yeah.
And I said, look, I've spent my entire career working with large banks. So I think, and I deal with a lot of them today. There are a few things that are different about if you want to just take a fintech world and, a fintech we run in the financial services space and, our legacy bank. I said typically in those environments, the CEO would probably have a coding background and will have a very keen understanding of how problems are solved using latest technologies, and will, be able to sit down and draw up the solution. Whereas the way we run legacy banks is about direction, control, guidance, but not necessarily problem solving at the highest level. The problem solving is dedicated downwards. The problem identification happens, but that goes down. I said the second thing is you touched upon that, which is fail fast, right? Is there an appetite to fail fast or fail at all, right? And be able to contain the failure and live with it. And that's something that culturally doesn't come to bankers, because we are always risk averse and every crisis has made us even worse. But there are ways to contain those risks and be able to experiment intelligently. The third thing is the innovation is not about organization and structures necessarily. You do need that to enable, but the innovation is like here, right? Between your ears. And you have to change the way you think, because you're talking about going onto a completely new realm. And it is vital that you start on that journey. And as I said, I did my career in large banks, and I know it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Right? I often get asked by people, look, if you guys can create solutions like this, the other tech firms, fintechs creating all this, how come these large organizations with enormous resources at their disposal can't do it? And I got asked that same question even at that forum. I said, number one, large means complex, which means competing priorities. Large also means interest groups, and therefore means certain level of politics. And don't underestimate that for a minute. And the third thing is the risk reward is skewed towards risk. If you did something spectacular, you've bought yourself 1 year of fame. If you got something wrong, it's a career limiting move that people will never forget. So I think just culturally, the environments aren't tuned for that. And that's why, that's something that organizations need to think differently. My favorite example there is an interview Steve Jobs gave many years ago, where he said, they were already amongst the top few most valuable companies in the world. He said, how many committees do you think run Apple?
Oh, yeah.
And he said, the answer is 0. Because there are people who are responsible for each area. They're able to pull the resources that they need to enable what they're meant to deliver, and that is it. There are no committee decisions. There's somebody who's head of engineering, there's somebody who's head of marketing, somebody in distribution, somebody who design, and that's what they're meant to deliver. So, and you see that when you create those kind of environments, you do encourage innovation, but you also allow and leave room for failure, which is really an important part of innovation.
That's true. I think also this politics is a very real thing, right?
Oh yeah.
No, it's absolutely.
I
Thanks for
agree.
bringing that up. It's so real, right? And the more revolutionary and transformative the technologies that you're dealing with, the more politics you will encounter, because it has the ability to fundamentally change all your business processes. Now, I was reading an article in Harvard Business Review, which was posted on LinkedIn by one of my very good friends, Tom Davenport, who's a very celebrated AI professor in his own right, which says now business process re-engineering has a fundamentally new meaning now. We've always talked about business process re-engineering, but now it's back to the fore, right? We used to think, oh, BPR is something which is old and gone and dusted, but now it is more important now because AI has brought that to the fore with a completely new meaning. Now, if you are fundamentally changing your business processes, people who are entrenched and very, very used to a certain way of working and fundamentally averse to change, they're only the first reaction would be to protest it, to oppose it, make use of their existing networks, as Sanjay alluded to, within the organization, to oppose that change. So it automatically becomes political. You have diverse opinions, and that's a big roadblock to democratizing the AI.
And the stigma of failure emboldens that. I told you this was going to fail. What you need
I told you so.
And what you need is exactly what you mentioned, which is somebody at the top saying, yeah, we learned something new. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Rather than say, oh, you're
Exactly.
right, we failed. Can we just put this to a stop, right? And I think that's the remarkable change you need in many organizations.
That's why to be truly AI driven, you need to have that mandate from the very top of the organization. Think about Piyush Gupta and what he did with DBS. That mandate has to be coming from that level of the organization, saying, I'm okay to deal with failure as long as I'm seeing rapid experimentation, an intent in the right direction, and everyone pushing together in the same direction. So eventually, you'll fail fast, succeed faster, and you reach the goal of becoming an AI-driven organization where most decisions or every decision is an AI-driven decision.
Amazing. So I guess the next part of the equation is making sure that companies know how to use it properly. And that means using it responsibly and ethically. I think this is a big topic. It's very complicated. And I think everyone is still trying to figure it out realistically. So what are your thoughts on, I guess, responsible AI, and how would you go about enforcing it?
That's a great point. When I started looking at the application of AI closely, this is over 5 years ago, one of the thoughts that I had as I kept going deeper into it is trying to find an analogy or a similarity with something else in an environment which I could equate AI with. And the closest thing I can think of is nuclear energy, right?
The quantum physics again.
It's quantum physics again. Don't control it, because then it will render it useless. But what you want to do it is guard it, right? And guarding means that you want that nuclear energy to light up the city and not blow it up. AI has similar risks in it, and very high profile AI failures by both some of the big tech that you mentioned, the big financial and other institutions that we know of, have been publicly seen. And that highlights that despite all the resources that are available to these entities, they were still not able to harness AI to get the right outcomes necessarily. So a new financial institution launched, and this is well documented, which is the business, Goldman Sachs and Apple put together. They used AI for hiring till it figured that there were enormous biases in those algorithms, and they rightfully obviously put that to a stop. But you have to imagine, these are two of the best names we know in their respective industries with massive resources available to them. The same thing, if you look at more recently, was Galactica by Meta, right? Ran into problems again. You look at BART, that Google launched similarly. And this is a realization as an industry we have, is that with more power comes more responsibility. And going back to the principles of fairness, ethics, explainability, etc., become really, really paramount, because you could rush into it. I could get a data set through an algorithm, bring out something and say that's the model and we are done. But is it fair? Does it meet the ethical requirements of our society? Is it transparent enough for people to know what they're getting into? Are really, really important pieces. The advantage I had when I was still grappling with this early on was in 2018, MAS came out with the draft framework for Veritas, the Veritas draft framework. And I went through that, and it was really, really powerful and caught all these nuances really well. It was a draft framework, but if you went through even that version, you knew it was almost like 85-90% there. What we did was, in designing our solution, which we know was an application of AI that organizations would use for some of their credit scoring, we made that literally a foundation for our product, which meant enormous more effort, right? So it took us a lot longer, a lot more investments went in there. And this is something we've watched and guarded very closely. And I think we've got to a point where we are very, very confident about the outcomes we have. But in our R&D, this is something we watch every day. And I would encourage that anybody who's using AI, who's using AI-powered tools, actually demand those elements in there. Demand that you demonstrate the fairness of these. Or how do I ensure that fairness is built into how I'm applying this? Because otherwise you're likely to have enormous failures, which could at times, and that has happened in recent past, cost real lives, right? It's not just a theoretical loss anymore. So, it is still very paramount. And what's great is that it's being recognized today as something absolutely vital to using AI. We don't have enough governance around AI today. There are no rules and standards. You have rules and standards on use of nuclear energy. You don't have anything on AI. You don't have anything about, it's like saying if a nuclear reaction went wrong, whose fault is it, right? If an AI goes wrong, who's at fault, right? And that's a question that keeps coming up every time. There are frameworks that are gradually coming around, but till those are mature enough, it becomes important for the users to assume that responsibility.
Oh, absolutely agreed. I think the FEAT is a great step in the right direction. I think the fairness, ethics, accountability, and transparency are sort of constituent building blocks of responsible AI. I think it's a very good step in the right direction. It is very comprehensive, right? I think what one must realize is that the AI model in itself is only part of the constituent of responsible AI. Right? Responsibility, governance, trust is engendered across the process of building an AI model, from data acquisition to data preparation, feature engineering, building of the model till it's being put into production, and how it is monitored post-production, right? That is the whole life of the model is under scrutiny when you're talking about the responsible use of AI, because a failure in any of these steps can result in an unintended consequence. And that's just one part of it. That's the tech part of it, right? You need to be making sure that the purpose that AI is solving is ethical, it's known, and there's a wider consensus on that purpose for that solving that AI. Right? There is no obvious group of people who's standing to be disadvantaged because of the output of the AI algorithm, for example. Right? There is proper disclosures in place of what may happen with this particular AI algorithm. Different scenarios have been modeled based on extreme values that this AI algorithm can generate, and the consequences associated with those values, for example. Right? So, yeah, feet is a great step in the right direction, but one must always remember that AI is a multi-dimensional subject, right? It's not just the model itself is one small part, it's not one small cog in the wheel of a larger beast that you're tackling, particularly practical AI, which is every organization's dream to do, like AI which is practically valuable. That is, the model itself is a small cog in the wheel. So one must, at certain times, step back and take a look at the woods and not the tree itself when looking at responsibility.
So I think we all agree here that AI is not simple. But I think one of the things that organization needs is to build a team with people who know how to translate technical nuances of AI into business cases. That's probably one of the most challenging areas to hire. Speaking to a lot of people, that someone who can sit in between business and technical, have enough of understanding of each to actually translate those requirements, right? I guess for each of you, when you build your teams or you hire, especially in the data science side, what do you look out for? What skills do you look out for? And how do you test for these, when you actually do the interviews?
Well, that's a great question, because this is something we're continuously doing. We're hiring people into our data science team, very key to our solution and what we're doing as a company. In our typical experience, what we find is when we advertise a job is a typical ratio of 100 CVs translating into one offer. And that's been the case every time. And the reason for that is in terms of people's understanding of what data science really means. And it's about, as you mentioned, it's about understanding the data and how it applies to a certain context, and then understanding the science of how to use it, right? It's not a one size fits all, or it's not, well, I did this course which told me in these 5 problems, these are the 5 algorithms to use, right? What, where, how, understanding the difference. A good data scientist has a really difficult task. They need to be a near master of the domain and definitely a master at maths. The shortcut of saying, well, I know how these libraries work and which has which algorithm, and I just, flush the data through that and get some magic happening, is it is a very simplistic view of the world. So when we're doing the selection, a lot of our selection is around actually determining the understanding of the principles and the why of it. Does the person understand that adequately enough? The domain aspect is something which is very desirable. And if the person also has that, that's great. But being a very good data scientist is very important, because these are the people who are continuously learning, right? The way we solve problems today compared to how we did 18 months ago, 36 months ago is quite different, right?
Not true.
It's not, well, I've created this solution today and it's done and it can run like this for the next 10 years. No, it doesn't. And so there is a need to be able to identify the learning process this individual has. How they evolved as an individual, whether the experience is 3 years or 10 years, right? What did they start with? How did they evolve? How did they find those points of inflection in their learning journey? How have they learned to apply what they know in the context of solving problems? We even have our own proprietary case studies. So we realized very early on that there are a lot of case studies available on the web, and most of the organizations are using that. So if you're a candidate, you can download the full library of questions and answers both there. What we have is our own set of case studies, and our CTO and the team are constantly updating it. So if somebody got interviewed in January and they were to tell somebody, well, this is what I did with the case study, I can assure you the person who's interviewing now is going through a very different case study. But it is, I think, an amazing field where the opportunities are boundless at this point in time. But it's also a great leveler. We are finding places where somebody with 3 years experience has scored way better than somebody with 10. So the number of years do not matter, because a lot of what they're learning and applying is probably not longer than a few years ago anyway, right? And if somebody said, I've done this for 10 years, but they kind of stopped or slowed down their learning 4 years ago, they're already kind of falling behind, right? So I think it's a really interesting place and great source of learning for us when we're hiring people there.
Yeah, I think fundamentally agree with you, Sanjay. Right? I think the way I look at it is like AI from a practitioner's point of view. An AI professional or a data science professional, to be a very, very good one, you need to have 3 high-level skills. Right? You need to have a very, very good understanding of mathematics. You need to have a very, very good understanding of computer science, and you need to have a very, very good understanding of business. We're not talking about academic research here, like practically applicable data science skills, right? These 3 combinations are very, very important. It's very rare to find a candidate which has a very high degree of skill in all of these 3. Right? So it's mostly 2 out of 3 you'll find, very more often rather than not. Right. So, I think as the AI field evolves, the ability of a data scientist to know about mathematics and computer science, the dependency on that will continue to decrease. Right. Think about this. We have all used in mathematics, in the mathematical field, we have used optimizers, right? You run a mathematical optimizer, and that can do the optimization for you. When was the last time you actually went in and coded an optimizer yourself? You didn't, right? Because there is a software which is doing a mathematical optimization for you. You just trust the results of this. So the ability for a guy to set up the right optimization problem with the right constraints is very, very important. So as the field of AI evolves, I think our dependence on highly sophisticated mathematicians or computer scientists in organizations and enterprises, to hire them as data scientists will continue to sort of decrease, in my opinion. And we will continue to see more and more demand for people who can spot an opportunity in the business, which AI can really improve or really enhance, convert that into an AI problem, so reframe that into an AI problem and dig into its constituents' requirements. That will be a very, very important skill to continue to have.
Okay, fantastic. So to close out this podcast, right, I think we'll get each of your takes on, I guess, where we are in the journey right now, and then where do we go from here. Sanjay, would you like to kick us off?
As I said in the beginning, I still think we are in the early stage. So if this is a full 26-mile marathon, we are somewhere in the first or the second mile of it. The applications of AI, in a way, we are truly harnessing its ability to improve lives everywhere. The acceptance and understanding of how this benefits us, and where it should be applied and where it should not, is still something we are working with. Certain use cases and some great success stories to give us that confidence. but I still think it's in the early stages. It will be some time before you see the maturity come to a level where we are all comfortable with the concept of using AI. If you remember when automobiles started, there was a rule which said that if you're driving a car, there has to be this guy in front carrying a light. So to warn off people, just in case they accidentally get crushed before this vehicle. But that's how the process of automobiles started, and they replaced these horse carriages. And it felt like this is as good as it gets. We've got something that's motorized and it's going. When computers moved from punch cards, where you punched the cards, you gave them to a computer center and collected your printouts in the evening to see whether your code was okay. When that got replaced by these big green screen CRTs, where you could run the code and see the outcome instantaneously, it looked like this is as good as it gets. I think we've seen some amazing achievements in AI, but I still think it's somewhere in that stage of the green screen cathode ray tube monitor, where you could move away from morning to evening running a computer program to something where you could code and amend the code instantaneously. But there's a long way to go.
Agreed. I think particularly for large enterprises whose core offering is not tech, I think there's a long way for them, and a lot of opportunities, I would rather say, for them to make use of AI. I think that's true. But having said that, I think we are definitely moving away from an experimental phase of AI into a commercialization phase, in which people are looking for practically applicable AI solutions which can generate real value. I mean, whether that is dollar value or societal value or any other value. Value is all about perception or how we perceive it. Right? So that is definitely a phase that we are in. I think, more technically speaking, like we've always known that extremely large neural networks, rather simple ones with a very simple feed-forward architecture, can pass the Turing test. We're seeing it right now. I think that's a very exciting space to be. I think that will continue to improve. The question that we need to ask ourselves is how much investment has to go into that improvement, right? Because Moore's law is very famous. You're saying that the computing doubles every roughly 18 months. In this phase, how much investment do you need to continue to make till it reaches a state in which it's not really that valuable? The ROI is not valuable. I think that's the key question that we need to ask ourselves. We are definitely seeing a move towards what's known as artificial general intelligence, right? Which is essentially AI, which is applicable generally to a lot of topics. That's artificial general intelligence. I think we are moving towards that. But at the same time, I think we will start to have highly specialized solutions, which AI can solve very, very well. Think about ChatGPT, for example, is a large language model, which is very good at predicting the next best word. That's all it's doing. It's predicting the next best word, right? It's got no degree of confidence in the accuracy of that prediction, in my opinion. That degree of confidence will start to come eventually. And what will happen is we'll start to have ontologies specially created in highly specialized domains, for example, healthcare, clinical trials, for example, in the telco industry or in the banking industry, where ontologies and the words and the jargons that are used are very different. You'll start to have a chat GPT for healthcare, a chat GPT for banking, a chat GPT for telco emerge, which is not general, but highly accurate in what it is meant to do, which is to solve telco or banking or healthcare related problems. So I think we are in a very, very exciting phase of AI right now. There is a shift that we are seeing from experimentation to commercialization, and from specific to general intelligence to AI passing the Turing test, which is very fascinating, to becoming highly accurate in a one specialized field.
Fantastic. So, I'd like to thank you for joining us on the podcast. I think it's been really good, insightful, and I think your perspectives, really would resonate with a lot of our audience. So once again, appreciate you coming down for the podcast today. And to our listeners, stay tuned for more. And we'll see you on the next one.